At my age, I'm still single, and every month my younger sister Emily would transfer money to me. I do have a job, but as a temp worker, it doesn't look great. One day, Emily announced her engagement, and we had a family meeting with both sides. Michael, I heard about you. A loser being supported by his sister. Don't you feel ashamed? Emily's fiancé Kevin, who would soon be her husband, mocked me as he said this. Even though his parents tried to intervene, they seemed to look down on me just like Kevin did. Hey, Kevin, that's rude. His mother, Mary, tried to scold him, but she couldn't hide her laughter. Then suddenly, Emily stood up and looked down at her fiancé and parents. How dare you say that? Michael is actually. As Emily spoke, Kevin began to tremble. My name is Michael, and I'm a 55-year-old bachelor. I work as a temp employee, cleaning the common areas of apartments and condos. On this day too, I was about to clean the entrance of a condo, placing my cleaning tools in the corner. Two men were having a conversation there. They seemed to be staff from the tenant on the first floor. The slightly chubby middle-aged man appeared to be the boss, speaking arrogantly to the other guy. Not wanting to interrupt, I started sweeping the hallway first. Even after finishing everything except the entrance, they were still talking, so I began tidying up the unused cleaning supplies. Waiting for them to finish, then the middle-aged man spoke to me. Hey, what are you lurking around for? Are you eavesdropping on our conversation? Surprised by the sudden accusation, I defended myself. Not at all. I'm just here to clean. I thought it would be rude to interrupt, so I cleaned the hallway first. The middle-aged man cut me off angrily. Oh, so you, a mere cleaner, are telling us to move? He took a step closer and yelled at me. Listen up, I'll teach you something. I'm the president of the company on the first floor. I also live in the penthouse of this building. Someone in a lowly job like you shouldn't be speaking to me. He was so close that I couldn't immediately grasp what he was saying. While I stood there in shock, the middle-aged man took his subordinate and headed somewhere. As they left, the subordinate gave me an awkward nod. But still angry, the middle-aged man yelled, "What are you doing? Hurry up and call a taxi," and disappeared. Was my response wrong? Feeling unsettled and in a terrible mood, I left. Usually, after cleaning, I feel refreshed, but today I felt awful. I walked through the shopping district towards the station. I passed by office workers finishing work and families out for dinner. I encountered many different people. I wondered if there were others feeling as down as I was. I wanted to shake off this bad mood quickly. Autumn had ended, and by the time I got home, it was already dark. As my apartment came into view, my phone rang. The caller was my sister Emily, 12 years younger than me. I felt a rush of happiness at her call. Michael, it's been a while. I have some news. I'm getting married. In a bashful and happy voice, Emily made her announcement. I was so happy for her that I couldn't immediately find the words. That's wonderful news. Congratulations. Tears started to flow from my eyes. Emily and I are the only family we have. Our parents died in an accident when I was in college, and since then, we've supported each other. That day was Emily's 10th birthday. To celebrate Emily's birthday, I went to the department store to buy a present. Michael, take care of Emily for us. Sure. Don't forget to buy the cake. You two are having lunch out, right? Take your time. I waved my parents off with those words. Our parents were very close, and I was really proud of them. After they left, I took Emily to the supermarket to buy ingredients for dinner. Since Emily wanted hamburgers, and I enjoy cooking, I decided to make dinner for us. Returning from the supermarket, I started preparing dinner. Emily was watching TV in the living room when she suddenly raised her voice. Hey, isn't that a road we pass by often? The news was reporting a multi-car pileup. Mom and Dad might be late getting back. I assumed the accident would cause a traffic jam. I hoped that would be the extent of it, but then the phone rang. I had a bad feeling. Emily also looked worriedly at the ringing phone. Hello? Slowly, I put the receiver to my ear and heard shocking news. A drunk driver in a truck had crashed into my parents' car, causing a chain reaction of accidents. My vision went dark. I stood there, stunned by the news of my parents' sudden death. Emily and I rushed to the hospital, but we weren't allowed to see them. The damage was severe, and I understood why they didn't want Emily to see them like that. But that made it even harder for us to accept the reality. I can still vividly remember our parents leaving with smiles on their faces. Emily clung to me tightly while we listened to the police and doctors. Emily was devastated that her birthday had become the anniversary of our parents' death, and from that day, her smile disappeared. Every night, I could hear Emily crying in her room. I had no more tears left, even during the funeral. My heart felt hollow, and Emily's cries pierced me every time. After the funeral, a relative offered to take Emily in. I was about to graduate from college and start working, while Emily still needed a lot of care. The relatives, concerned about how difficult it would be for me, discussed it among themselves. I was truly grateful for that. However, I felt that our family shouldn't be separated. I will protect Emily. I believed I was the one who could bring back her smile, so I politely declined the relatives' offer. Emily also refused to leave the house filled with memories of our parents, so the relatives backed off but assured us we could reach out anytime. Just as our parents did for me, I vowed to ensure that Emily would graduate from college. I made that promise to myself. However, losing our parents had a significant impact on Emily's mental state. She became frequently absent from school and had trouble sleeping. As a college student, I could spend more time with Emily, but once I started working, it became harder. Emily, I have to start working in April, so maybe we should start practicing going to school? At my words, Emily burst into tears. No. I don't want you to leave too, Michael. I was just talking about work, but Emily, in her unstable state, panicked. But I couldn't avoid working, and Emily couldn't keep hiding forever. I decided to consult my aunt, Anna. I understand. I can only come once a week, but I'll try to visit as often as I can. Anna worked as a school counselor and was experienced in dealing with truant children. Since I was worried about Emily when my working hours increased, I asked her to check in on Emily from time to time. Listen, Emily. I'm here for you, so don't worry. Let's work together to get back to our normal lives. I patted her head to comfort her. The words "I'm here for you" always together seemed to reassure Emily, and I used them whenever she panicked. These words also expressed my commitment to supporting Emily as I began my working life. Although I had part-time job experience in college, working full-time in the real world was entirely different. I joined an electronics manufacturer as a sales representative. There, I learned many things while being scolded by my bosses and seniors. Customers would sometimes complain, making me realize the challenges of customer service. Honestly, there were times I wanted to quit. But I kept going for Emily's sake. Thinking of her, I could persevere through anything. President Johnson taught me the significance of earning a living, making me value my family even more, and I gradually advanced through hard work. Anna told me Emily was also making progress, which reassured me, but she still had unstable moments, so we always had breakfast and dinner together. While a long-distance truck driving job or night shifts would pay more, I decided to maintain our current lifestyle until Emily entered college. Our life wasn't luxurious, but we managed. To save on food costs, my cooking skills improved significantly, and Emily enjoyed the challenge of making tasty meals on a budget. However, when Emily was about to enter high school, the electronics company I worked for went bankrupt and I lost my job. I wanted to find another job quickly, but permanent positions were scarce, so I ended up taking a temp job as a cleaner. Unlike my previous job, I had flexible hours, directly going to and from cleaning assignments, which meant a lower income but more time with Emily. Since Emily was now in high school, she said, "I'll help out. Leave the laundry to me," and we divided the housework. Emily also started working part-time. Although she had been so depressed that she needed counseling from Anna. She eventually improved and enjoyed interacting with people at her convenience store job. Despite the changes in our lifestyle, we made sure to always eat together. Today is payday, so I bought a cake. We were poorer than most families. But even with our modest life, treating ourselves on payday became our little joy. I wished I could take her out for sushi or a family restaurant meal, but my salary only covered our basic needs. Since Emily started working, she earned her pocket money and managed her school expenses. She also began taking care of the garden our parents cherished, making it look better than when I used to maintain it. Dad and Mom would be so happy to see this garden. Emily smiled at my words. After losing our parents, I wondered how we would manage, but with Aunt Anna's help, Emily regained her smile. I really wanted to send her to a prep school for college. But I was so focused on saving for her tuition that I couldn't afford it, and I once had to bow my head in apology to Emily. "Michael, you don't know my grades, do you?" When she showed me her school test results, I was speechless. Recently, she had ranked within the top 5 in all mock exams. Despite being busy with housework and a part-time job, she managed to achieve such high scores. Emily was incredibly diligent and my pride. I realized she had been supporting me all along. She had once told me she planned to get a job after high school. She probably felt guilty seeing me work hard for her. But that wouldn't do. That would negate my efforts. "No, Emily, you should go to college and study what you love." Looking at me with a troubled expression, I told her. "Japan still values academic credentials, and even with a degree, like me, you could face unemployment if a company goes bankrupt. Life is unpredictable, so go to college." Emily's heartfelt concern touched me deeply. Even though we were living a modest life after losing our parents, I didn't want to limit Emily's future. Then Emily shared her dream with me: "I want to become a nurse." When Emily's college entrance exams started, she quit her part-time job, making our life a bit tougher. She was accepted into university, but with the overwhelming amount of assignments and practical training, we no longer had time for our cherished meals together. Now was the time to persevere. The nursing training was more demanding than I could have imagined, and Emily often came home exhausted, sometimes even bursting into tears as soon as she got home. I told her many times that it was okay to quit if it was too hard, but Emily always shook her head and continued to pursue her dream. Eventually, Emily passed her exams and fulfilled her dream of becoming a nurse. She got a job at the hospital where our parents had been taken and where they had passed away. That day changed our lives. Driven by the regret of losing our parents, Emily pushed herself to save as many lives as possible. To celebrate Emily's achievement of becoming a nurse, we treated ourselves to an extravagant dinner at a fancy sushi restaurant. Although Emily had secretly taken out student loans to cover her tuition, I made sure she had everything she needed for living on her own. "Michael, I'm home. I'll put this here." After starting her job, Emily would always come home on payday. "Since I quit halfway through high school and could only do a little during college," she would say, leaving part of her salary to help with living expenses. Although she had become independent, I always tried to refuse, but Emily insisted, saying it was her way of repaying me for supporting her through college. "Michael, you supported me from your first year as a working adult. Now I understand how difficult that must have been. You gave up your best years for me, and I'm deeply grateful." I had lived for Emily's sake, never thinking of it as a sacrifice. It was my duty as a brother and a family member. But if accepting her money would ease her guilt, I decided to take it. "All right, I'll accept it. But only half." I tried to ease her burden as much as possible. As Emily got busier with work, her monthly visits became less frequent, and she started transferring the money instead. However, we kept in touch through messages. I never expected that the next call I received would be about her engagement. Reflecting on our past, I felt nostalgic. I truly wanted Emily to be happy. She had gone through so much and deserved all the happiness. Emily always smiled, lifting my spirits when I was down. She must have had her own tough times and probably wished her life was more like other kids' homes. But Emily never complained and always expressed her gratitude to me, saying thank you. Tears welled up in my eyes. If I'm this emotional now, I'll probably cry my eyes out at her wedding. The family meeting was set for the following Saturday, and I marked it in my planner immediately. I wondered what kind of person Emily would bring. I was eagerly looking forward to meeting the family who would be living with my dear Emily from now on. The big day arrived. Dressed in a new suit, I headed to the French restaurant where the meeting was scheduled. I usually wore work clothes, so it had been a while since I wore a suit. I checked myself in the mirror multiple times. I prayed for a wonderful day. With determination, I bowed before our parents' altar. Emily and her fiancé were already waiting outside the restaurant. Her fiancé, Kevin, looked very refreshing. Emily, who had been lamenting her lack of good matches, was 43 years old. I was curious about her fiancé's age, but at 45, he was close to Emily's age, which reassured me. Kevin worked at a bank and seemed sincere. They had met through mutual friends at a gathering. With his polite manners and constant smile, I felt confident that Kevin and Emily would build a happy home together. As the three of us enjoyed a pleasant conversation, Emily's fiancé's parents arrived. "Nice to meet you. I'm Emily's brother." I immediately greeted her fiancé's parents and bowed deeply. Then her fiancé's father, John, looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Have we met somewhere before?" Looking closely at John's face, I felt he looked familiar. "Oh!" I exclaimed. I remembered, he was the middle-aged man who had yelled at me while I was cleaning the other day. John seemed to recognize me too and laughed through his nose. "Ah, so you're the cleaner from that time." He then began boasting about himself. "You have a tough job, don't you? Besides that tenant, I also own other companies and run a business in a building near the station." He continued talking about his achievements and income, clearly looking down on me. Emily's fiancé's mother, Mary, sighed and tried to stop him. "Please, let's leave it at that and listen to what the two have to say." Even though she intervened, John seemed displeased and redirected his focus entirely on me. Despite it being a celebration for the two of them, he bombarded me with questions. Although I wasn't feeling great, they were the important family of Emily's partner. So, I answered all their questions. "We lost our parents, but we've supported each other all this time. Emily became a nurse to help others and reduce the number of people losing their lives like our parents. Despite her own challenges, she even contributes part of her salary to household expenses every month. She has a truly kind heart." I shared our story as requested, but the one who reacted was Kevin. "Wait, is that story true?" Kevin laughed, clutching his stomach. "Michael, I've heard about you. A useless man being supported by his sister. Don't you feel ashamed? A sister sending money to her brother. That's unheard of." Kevin mocked me, and I felt a wave of regret for sharing our story. Even though his parents tried to intervene, they also seemed to look down on me. "Kevin, that's rude." Although Mary scolded him, she couldn't hide her laughter. When I glanced at Emily, she was looking down and trembling. She probably never imagined her fiancé could be like this. She seemed deeply shocked. Despite it being a special occasion, I had embarrassed Emily. I couldn't turn back now and felt at a loss. Then Emily stood up, looking down at Kevin and his parents. "How dare you say that? My brother Michael is actually..." Struggling with her words, Emily continued. "John, do you know the name of the building where your company is located?" "Oh, it's the Smith Building. I thought it was a coincidence that it had the same name as yours." John smiled as he spoke, but Emily revealed the truth without hesitation. "Do you know the name of the owner of that building?" "Ha? I don't remember such details." "What does that have to do with anything?" John looked at Emily irritably, and I interrupted, feeling a spark of irritation myself. "Allow me to introduce myself again. I'm Michael Smith, the owner of the Smith Building." The three of them widened their eyes in shock. While working as a temp, I had invested our parents' inheritance wisely. Real estate was one of those investments, funded partly by the money Emily sent me each month. I had planned to give Emily some of these investments as gifts when she got married, and they had grown enough to support me without working. "You've worked so hard. Now, why don't you take it easy?" Emily had also once told me to take it easy, but my nature made me want to keep working. Now, I clean various buildings and condos 3 times a week as requested. That's where I unexpectedly ran into John. Since my company also cleaned his building, I often encountered his employees, but the atmosphere was always unpleasant. And they never returned my greetings. Knowing John was their boss now made perfect sense. Hearing Emily and me speak, Kevin began to tremble and quickly changed his tone. "Oh, I had no idea you were the owner. What a wonderful brother you have, right, Dad?" "Yes, a very respectable man." Their sudden flattery made me feel nauseous. "Really? It's such an honor to become family with someone who put Emily through college." "Indeed. Since we are becoming family, how about a discount on the rent? It was unclear whether he was joking or serious. I'm afraid we don't offer such services. I said this with a serious face and a low voice to the three who were grinning slyly. Sorry, Michael. I accidentally let it slip even though it was a secret. Given the unpredictable nature of life, Emily and I had kept the details of my investments between us. Emily peered at me with a worried look, and I responded with a smile, saying, It's okay, don't worry about it. I mentioned the allowance, so we're even. But it's good this way. We got to see Kevin's true colors and almost avoided a big mistake. Everyone present let out a collective what? Emily smiled brightly and said, Of course, this wedding is off. Kevin and his parents are too much, they would corrupt me too. Seeing Emily so strong, I felt proud. Later, Emily, who had taken some days off, came to stay at our family home. While we were having tea, the doorbell suddenly rang. We rarely had visitors other than deliveries, so I was curious as I went to the door. Opening it, I saw an unfamiliar handsome man standing there. I was about to ask if he had the wrong house, but he spoke first. Excuse me for the rudeness of my parents and brother the other day. I apologize for their behavior. I was surprised he knew about the incident. I'm Tom, Kevin's younger brother. I heard about my brother's rudeness and came to apologize. I am actually the owner of that French restaurant. Emily is here now, please come in. Tom explained that he had been excited when he heard about his brother's engagement celebration being held at his restaurant and had prepared special dishes. However, after hearing about his family's behavior from his staff, he was disillusioned. Tom seemed to be a sensible person and shared how his family had troubled him over the years. As you probably realized, my father is arrogant, my mother just goes along with him, and my brother looks down on everyone. I couldn't stand it and kept my distance by attending a boarding school. He sighed deeply, expressing his frustration with his unchanging family, and then said something surprising. I know it's sudden, but hearing Kevin's story made me realize I need to protect Emily. I've received bragging messages from Kevin about his dates and her cooking. The more I heard, the more I liked her. I was so surprised that my mouth hung open. I know it's not the best timing, but I can't suppress my feelings. Neither Emily nor I had expected this turn of events. I have no intention of associating with my parents or Kevin anymore. If Emily is willing, I'd like to date her, even if we start as friends. Emily couldn't immediately agree, but they began going out as friends. Working as a civil servant at the city hall and later becoming the owner of a French restaurant, Tom had an interesting background. He learned to cook from scratch as an adult and opened his own restaurant, which quickly impressed Emily. A year later. Please allow me to take care of Emily. Tom vowed to cut ties with his family and protect my sister. There was no reason to refuse such a sincere man. So I accepted him. Given their ages, they decided not to have a wedding ceremony and planned a trip around the country instead. Wanting to wholeheartedly celebrate, I paid for the entire trip. Emily's happiness is my happiness. Today, as always, I pray at our parents' altar, wishing for Emily's continued happiness. What business does a middle school graduate have at a big company? You must be lost, so go home immediately. When I arrived at the client's company for the meeting, Kevin, a classmate from middle school, mocked me. In middle school, I did live a life that could be called the bottom rung, and I went straight to work without attending high school. Is being a middle school graduate really such a bad thing? I clenched my fists, trying to suppress the anger rising within me. It seems I'm really out of place here. Excuse me. With that, I quietly left the place. On the way back to my company, I called my secretary, Clark, on my phone. Cancel the ongoing deal. Pull everyone out. Are you serious? That's a $30 million deal. Yes, I'm serious. We'll sign with the other company, Stevens. Besides Kevin's company Sunlight, we had another potential company for this deal. And the discretion of which company to sign with was entrusted to me. My name is Tom. I'm 42 years old and work at a major air conditioning equipment company called Johnson. Currently, I'm having busy days as I approach a new contract. I want to finalize this deal quickly and disband the team as soon as possible. It's tough to work with people you don't get along with. It takes extra effort and the discussion often stalls due to disagreements. Regarding this contract, it shouldn't be that difficult in the first place. What complicates things is the presence of the sales manager, James. James is also 42 and has been the sales manager since last year. We've worked together several times since we were young, but we always clashed and never ended things on a good note. James had a stellar career and walked the elite path from the start. He graduated from a prestigious university in Tokyo and joined Johnson with great fanfare. He climbed the corporate ladder smoothly until I came along and disrupted things. Because we are the same age, we were seen as good rivals within the company. This didn't sit well with the proud James. I had worked at a subsidiary for a long time, and due to my achievements, I was brought into Johnson. From this experience, James completely looked down on me. However, since I started working at the same company, James has been having a rough time. James is not popular with women at all. He started balding at the crown in his 30s, and due to constant drinking at business meetings, his belly protrudes. Because of his appearance, he has no popularity among the female employees. On the other hand, I'm 6 feet tall, and I regularly work out at the gym, so I have a toned body. James was often compared to me in terms of appearance, which fueled his competitive spirit. He found out which gym I went to and immediately signed up. But having no habit of exercising for years, he became a member but never seemed to go. Therefore, he saw no results, and just walking a little made him sweat profusely and sit down, panting heavily. That's why he has no connections with women and is still single at 42. On the other hand, I got married at 30, and although we don't have children, I live happily with my beautiful wife. This time, I was to lead the team to finalize the contract, but there were significant problems with the client, which was causing me a headache. The other person causing me headaches was Kevin. Kevin was my classmate in both elementary and middle school, and I have no fond memories of him. I thought we had gone our separate ways for good and would never have to see each other again. But life has a funny way of bringing people back together. In middle school, we were rivals, always competing for the top spot in exams. We both had a strong desire not to lose, which drove us to study hard. I think that's when I learned the value of effort. If that period shaped who I am today, then maybe it wasn't so bad. But at the time, it was tough. I wanted a peaceful middle school life, but Kevin kept provoking me. From Kevin's perspective, he was supposed to always be number one, but my presence disrupted his plans. He must have held a grudge. Kevin had received elite education since before kindergarten. His mother, in particular, was very passionate about education and tried to get him into a prestigious private kindergarten. But Kevin failed the kindergarten entrance exam miserably. He couldn't hold it during the family interview and had to rush to the bathroom. Even now, his mother complains to the neighbors about Kevin's failure. Growing up with a mother who broadcasts such childhood failures to the neighborhood, how could a child develop properly? Kevin ended up attending a public kindergarten and failed again when trying to get into a prestigious private elementary school. By the time he was in middle school, his mother no longer pushed him to go to a famous school. This made Kevin feel more liberated, and his grades improved significantly. If I hadn't been his classmate, he would have easily been the top student, leaving a remarkable record. Even when he did come in first, people would ask, "What happened to the other guy this time?" To Kevin, I was nothing but an obstacle. After middle school, we went our separate ways, and I'm sure we both felt relieved. Kevin likely never expected to cross paths with me again, especially in his 40s. Given the importance of this deal to our company, I, as the team leader, had to go in person. The thought of meeting Kevin again after all these years was heavy on my mind. However, I thought maybe Kevin, having been through the trials of society, might have learned to consider others' feelings. If so, could we overcome our long-standing animosity and become friends? But that was just a fantasy. We were like the north and south poles of a magnet destined to repel each other. Kevin's company, Sunlight, is a major player in building management. It was impressive how he had steadily climbed the ranks. When our team from Johnson arrived at the Sunlight headquarters, we were shown to the meeting room. There stood Kevin, with stylishly groomed hair and a high-end suit. Kevin immediately recognized me. From the moment we exchanged business cards, he was disrespectful only towards me. As the meeting leader, Kevin introduced the Sunlight members but avoided eye contact with me. The Sunlight employees looked puzzled, unsure how to interact with me. Suddenly, Kevin spoke to me directly. "What are you doing here? Are you here to handle the machinery?" "Well, something like that," I replied, not wanting to provoke Kevin by revealing I was the team leader. Then, Kevin insulted me loudly enough for everyone in the meeting to hear. "What business does a middle school graduate have at a big company? You don't belong here, so leave immediately." In middle school, besides having good grades, I did live a life that could be called the bottom rung. And I went straight to work without attending high school. But is being a middle school graduate really such a bad thing? I clenched my fists, trying to suppress the anger rising within me. It seems I'm really out of place here. "Excuse me." With that, I quietly left the place. On the way back to the company, I called my secretary, Clark, on my phone. "Cancel the ongoing deal. Pull everyone out." "Are you serious? That's a $30 million deal." "Yes, I'm serious. We'll sign with the other company, Stevens." Besides Kevin's company Sunlight, we had another potential company for this deal. And the discretion of which company to sign with was entrusted to me. After hanging up, I put my phone in my chest pocket and looked out the car window. I now have a personal driver, and I can sit in the spacious back seat of a luxury car, spending my travel time in comfort. However, it took a lot of effort to get where I am today. I grew up without a father from a young age, raised by my mother and grandmother. According to my grandmother, my father ran off with another woman. Since then, my mother worked hard outside while my grandmother took care of the house and looked after me. I got used to not having a father around, but you never really get used to being poor. Moreover, once you start school, the difference in wealth becomes apparent through your belongings. Kevin's family was wealthy, and everything he owned was top-notch. As for me, I lived on hand-me-downs from neighbors. Though I was often praised for my good grades at school, outside of that, my poverty stood out and made me feel miserable. And in middle school, the countdown began for the inevitable fate of entering the workforce with just a middle school education. It was far from an enjoyable 3 years. After graduating middle school with no changes in my circumstances, Kevin and I went our separate ways. I joined a subsidiary of Johnson thanks to a connection my homeroom teacher had. The president of that subsidiary, Mr. Williams, had also struggled and started the company with just a middle school education. Seeing Mr. Williams gave me hope. Mr. Williams suggested I work while attending night school, allowing me to continue my education. With the support and understanding of my co-workers, who kindly covered my night shifts, I never missed a class. Despite others dropping out, I graduated high school with perfect attendance and entered a night university. I studied architecture in college, which directly benefits my current job. Thus, my credentials changed from middle school graduate to university graduate. It was all thanks to the help and cooperation of my colleagues. I vowed to repay this company for the rest of my life. After various events, I moved to the parent company Johnson following Mr. Williams's retirement. I now hold the position of director of the business department at Johnson headquarters. Next year, I am set to be promoted to an executive role. As director, I decided to switch the business partner from Sunlight to Stevens. Other employees returned from Sunlight headquarters, looking puzzled. "Tom, what's going on? We worked so hard on this deal, and now it's canceled at the last minute. Sorry for the sudden change." The person in charge over there didn't like the idea of me leading the negotiations. "It could cause problems for your work later on." Now that you mention it, Kevin did say something arrogant when he saw you. He talked with James after you left. I knew James had been working hard to secure this deal with Sunlight. I'll have to explain later that my decision wasn't out of spite towards James. If we signed with Sunlight, I'd have to see Kevin frequently. It's not just about me feeling uncomfortable, I expected it would negatively affect my employees. If Kevin looked down on me, the director, he would treat the other employees as inferior. Knowing Kevin's personality from childhood, I could predict his behavior. I have to protect the employees who work hard with me. In fact, everyone who heard Kevin's insults was furious. "That Kevin guy called you a middle school graduate at the bottom. Tom, you have an exemplary career. Graduating from university while contributing to the company." I've interacted with Kevin twice leading up to this deal, and he was just awful. right after we exchanged business cards. He asked about my alma mater. When he realized my rank was lower, he immediately looked down on me. On the other hand, Paul from Stevens is wonderful. I've been negotiating with Stevens, and he has a personality that makes you want to work with him. Even when Sunlight was chosen, he didn't show any resentment. No one criticized my decision to switch partners at the last minute. The only one who might still be grumbling would be James, who was still talking with Kevin at Sunlight headquarters. As I was discussing this with my team, my secretary Clark entered the room. "Kevin from Sunlight is here to see you. Will you meet him?" I had no time to hesitate, as Kevin forcefully entered right behind Clark. Kevin, looking very distressed, approached me quickly and bowed deeply. "I apologize. I had no idea you were in charge of this deal. James told me about your struggles and how you graduated from university. It's an inspiring story. You may have only known me as a middle school graduate, but whether or not I am the negotiator, those comments were unacceptable. I cannot work with someone who places such importance on academic background." As I firmly rejected him, Kevin trembled and looked up at me with pleading eyes. We used to be the same height in middle school, but I grew significantly taller afterward. Now Kevin had to look up at me. I wondered how he felt about the person he once looked down on now being taller and higher in social status. "Please, don't say that. This contract is crucial for our company. I'm responsible for it, and if it falls through, I won't know what to tell my superiors. That's not my concern. You aren't happy to see me again, are you? It's better for both of us if we don't interact anymore. Please, I beg you. Reconsider." Gone was his earlier arrogance, replaced by a pale face and repeated bows. He must hate bowing to someone like me. This must be the sad reality of being a corporate employee. At this moment, I was completely victorious. Kevin finally got on his knees, begging for forgiveness. "I realize now how I've made you uncomfortable since middle school. If this deal falls through, I'm in big trouble. I apologize for everything in the past, so please forgive me." As Kevin groveled on the floor, Clark entered and announced, "The representatives from Stevens have arrived." I left Kevin there and went to meet the Stevens team. Kevin lingered for a while but eventually gave up and left. The deal with Stevens went smoothly, thanks to the groundwork laid by our team. With the new contract, James, who had been working on the Sunlight deal, found himself isolated. James was furious with my decision. "We worked so hard to advance this deal, and now you're canceling it last minute. What was all my effort for? I truly apologize for that. This decision wasn't out of spite. You know my history with Kevin, but this isn't about old grudges." I felt genuinely sorry for James, who had been handling the negotiations. While I couldn't work with Kevin, James and I are colleagues. I hope to move forward without causing further conflict. I sincerely bowed to James. James seemed to misinterpret my humble gesture. Suddenly, he puffed up his chest and pointed his finger at me. "Do you think bowing is enough? Your forehead hasn't touched the floor. If you're really sorry, bow until your head scrapes the floor." Employees nearby looked on in shock. James, as the sales manager, was below me in rank. Demanding such excessive apology from his superior was problematic. At that moment, I heard the sound of high heels in the hallway. At the familiar sound, I lifted my head and looked toward the entrance of the room. My wife, Mia, appeared shortly after. Usually, she would greet me with a sweet smile, but she had clearly overheard our exchange and was furious. She stormed into the room, directing her anger at James. James, startled by Mia's fierce expression, took a step back. Mia stood close to me and admonished James. "Who do you think you are to demand my husband bow to you? You're just a sales manager." Mia is still head over heels for me, and we have an excellent relationship. Raised as the only daughter of the current president, Mr. Johnson, Mia never had any financial difficulties. She studied abroad in America during high school and went on to a prestigious women's university in Tokyo. After graduating from university, she worked in an office in the city for a while, but returned home at Mr. Johnson's request. Mr. Johnson intended for Mia to marry a man holding a significant position in the company. However, Mia, despite her straightforward personality, wanted to live her life according to her own will, not just following her father's wishes. She was willing to consider her father's opinion on her marriage partner, but she ultimately wanted to make her own choice. Mia first dated James. At that time, both were in their 20s, and James didn't have a protruding belly or a bald head yet. I once asked her out of curiosity, "What did you see in James?" Well, back then, his lack of good looks made me feel secure. I didn't have to worry about anyone else taking him. But as I started hearing bad things about him at work, my feelings cooled. As they continued dating, Mia began to feel uncomfortable with James's arrogant attitude and baseless confidence. Eventually, their relationship was full of arguments, and they grew apart. During this time, Mia happened to visit the head office and saw me walking down the hallway. She fell in love at first sight. She quickly started gathering information about me and, reassured by my good reputation and work ethic, approached me. When Mia first invited me to lunch, I was so surprised I thought it was a prank. We had a casual conversation, but Mia was captivated by my personality. Mia officially broke up with James and started dating me. She took the lead in our relationship, and we got married when I was 30. Mia, who respects and loves me wholeheartedly, is truly my goddess of destiny. After marrying Mia, I quickly surpassed James in my career. From James's perspective, I had taken Mia, who was within his grasp, and he might have felt I also took his career and personal life. As the world watched, James and Kevin, both closely connected to me, faced consecutive misfortunes. Their downfall contrasted with my rising success. Amidst this, a huge issue emerged between the two of them. Kevin had bribed James to secure a contract with Johnson. Both Johnson and Sunlight launched thorough investigations. Eventually, the investigators from both companies uncovered the deep-seated relationship between James and Kevin. It was revealed that they frequented a hidden bar together and leaked internal information about each other's companies. Kevin was the first to be exposed, having misappropriated company funds, and was immediately fired once the investigation concluded. James, who was on house arrest, was found to have used the bribe money from Kevin for his affair. James was single, but his affair was with a subordinate's wife from the sales department. The subordinate eventually divorced and kicked out his unfaithful wife. The wife tried to move in with James but was rejected, leading her to retaliate. She threatened to expose various things she had learned about James during their relationship, causing another uproar. Blaming James for the failure of her marriage, she even threatened to sue him. At this point, the company could no longer protect James, and he was forced into early retirement. My father-in-law, Mr. Johnson, was deeply shocked by James's betrayal. Especially since James had once dated his daughter and was seriously considered for marriage. Now, he was relieved that Mia didn't marry James. As James's misconduct was revealed, my father-in-law's regard for me soared. "Tom, I'm so glad I entrusted my daughter to you. James had a great education and decent sales performance, but he almost fooled me completely. All I could do was give a wry smile." Compared to Kevin in middle school and James as a working adult. Neither was pleasant, but in the end, I emerged victorious. Not feeling competitive or resentful about the comparisons led to good results. James sought help from Kevin, wanting a return on all the favors he'd done. But with Kevin also fired, he couldn't take care of James. In the end, James forced his way into Kevin's house, leading Kevin's wife to call 911, making it a police matter. The police officer who heard the story advised him, and he went home quietly that day. However, worried that he might come back, his wife and children moved to a weekly apartment. This naturally led to a state of separation. The new fiscal year began, and my position changed. I was promoted from director to executive vice president. The responsibility was greater, but I was motivated and excited for the future. The fact that someone like me, who had struggled so much, became an executive greatly boosted the morale of the employees. I didn't want to just sit in the executive's chair, I wanted to be an active leader who always considered the feelings of my subordinates. Amidst my busy days, I couldn't help but wonder what had happened to Kevin and James since then. Other employees seemed to feel the same, as rumors about their fates spread. First, Kevin. Since being fired from Sunlight, he has yet to find a new job. Kevin had a wife and children, but they left him around the same time he lost his job. Kevin, who desperately wants to repair the relationship, and his wife, who wishes to separate. Kevin, desperate to repair the relationship, visited his wife daily, pleading for her to return, but it seemed divorce was imminent. His loneliness led him to drink more, and he was often seen wandering the neighborhood drunk. James's situation was equally grim. Fortunately or unfortunately, being single meant he had no wife or children to leave. However, his affair ended abruptly. Even for the woman he was having an affair with, staying with her current husband was more secure than moving in with the jobless James. Her husband, wanting to ensure she and James wouldn't physically meet again, requested a transfer to a regional office. She decided to go with her husband, and they were working on mending their relationship. Left alone again, James struggled to find new employment. Having been single for a long time, James had substantial savings, which he decided to invest. Unfortunately, he lost a significant amount of money in high-risk investments. He depleted all his savings meant for future living expenses. James's future looked very bleak. A year has passed since I became executive vice president. My relationship with my wife remains as strong as ever. We didn't have children, but we focused on cherishing our life together. To keep the spark alive, we had weekly dates at upscale restaurants. One evening, while dining at a restaurant with a beautiful night view, Mia made a surprising confession. She was pregnant with twins. At 38, a pregnancy was concerning, but Mia was determined to safely deliver the twins. I was fully committed to supporting her through the pregnancy and beyond. We cherished our daily lives, enjoying the happiness of an expanding family. Here, I have your termination notice. What? For me? I was met with a sudden notice of termination as I arrived at work as usual. If I lose my job, I won't be able to survive. When I returned to my shabby apartment in utter despair, a beautiful woman greeted me with, "Welcome home, you're late today." She used to be homeless. Even in this rundown apartment, we finally had a roof over our heads. If this continues, I might end up back on the streets with her. This is the story of a man on the edge, trying to protect the woman he loves. My name is Brian. I'm 25 years old and have been with my current company for 4 years. My family wasn't wealthy, and I had a younger brother and sister. My parents never said it, but with our financial situation, it was difficult to send 3 kids to college. To make matters worse, the university I wanted to attend was private. As the eldest son, the only way for me to attend my desired university was to get a scholarship. I had been planning my future early and convinced my parents, who said they'd manage somehow, but I would handle things myself. I graduated from university and got a job right away. However, despite landing a job in my desired field, the pay was low, and I was constantly paying off student loans. Living a poorer life than I did as a student. I lived in a 50-year-old dilapidated apartment, constantly turned down invitations to drink with colleagues, and led a joyless life. Recently, Mr. Thompson, the company president who was kind to newcomers, passed away. Even though the pay was low, the company held together thanks to Mr. Thompson's personality. But since his son became the new president, our wages were cut under the guise of cost-cutting, and working conditions worsened. That day, as soon as it was time to leave, everyone quickly started packing up. There was likely a drinking party afterwards. I had always declined, so they had stopped inviting me. "Brian, you can work overtime if you want." I bet you weren't invited to today's drinking party either. The work I was doing couldn't progress without my boss's approval. If my boss went to the party, there was no point in staying, so I started packing up when the new president, Mr. Thompson Jr., sneered at me. This alone was unbecoming of a president, but he often targeted me, perhaps because we were the same age. "Sorry, I need approval from Luke, so I'll finish this tomorrow and leave for today." Despite his grandstanding, overtime pay wasn't even provided. I simply nodded at the new president, who seemed unsatisfied, and left the office. I didn't feel like heading straight back to my shabby apartment, so I killed some time at a nearby park. Payday was the day after tomorrow. Sitting on a park bench, I checked my wallet and found only $1.13. Even if I had been invited, I couldn't have joined the party, but it still bothered me. I remembered that the discount store down the street had a sale on non-alcoholic beer. In a fit of frustration, I decided to use my last $1.13 to have a solo drinking session. Just as I was about to stand up from the bench, a low growling sound echoed, and the person sitting a seat away from me collapsed onto my lap. Hey, wait a minute. I hadn't noticed in my wallet checking days, but the person next to me was a woman. Unable to react to the sudden situation, I froze, and the woman's head ended up resting on my lap. It was the first time a woman had rested her head on my lap. Frozen in place, I peered at her face. Oh wow! I thought I was dreaming. Though she was dirty, she was a stunning beauty, slightly older than me, unlike anyone I'd ever seen. The fact that I was giving a lap pillow to such a beautiful woman made my heart race. Are you okay? I hesitated to touch her but ended up shaking her shoulder. I'm so hungry. I can't go on. She answered in a small voice. She seemed to be all right. Just wait here for a moment. I gently laid her head off my lap, placed my down jacket as a pillow, and hurried to the convenience store in front of me. With my last $1.13, I bought a piece of bread. I then rushed back to the park. She was still collapsed on the bench. She might be ignored because she's homeless, but she was way too defenseless. Even though we just met, I couldn't help but worry about her. Here, take this. I held the bread close to her face so she could see it. Food? She immediately sat up. Her pure reaction was so endearing that I couldn't help but laugh. Ha ha. I'm glad you're feeling better. After a moment of freezing at my laughter, she seemed to understand the situation, and her face turned bright red. I'm sorry for everything. Before she could finish, her stomach growled again. Oh no. She stood up abruptly, looking like she was about to run away. Why don't you eat this and calm down first? At my suggestion, she quietly sat back down on the bench. She took the bread, saying, "Thank you. I'll gladly accept," and started eating it with relish. Seeing a beautiful woman happily eating bread made my bad day at work seem unimportant. It was incredibly soothing. Spending my last money on this was a much more meaningful use than buying non-alcoholic beer for a solo drinking session. Helping someone in need felt like a win-win. After finishing the bread, she smiled and said, "Thank you for the meal." Despite looking older, her smile made her appear a bit younger. No, I wish I could have offered something better, but I'm broke too." Really? And yet you gave me your precious bread. She looked surprised and started to panic. Don't worry about it. Payday is the day after tomorrow, so I just need to get through tomorrow. I'm a company employee. But I live paycheck to paycheck. Please don't say that. It's impressive that you have a job and are working hard. I'm sorry for being presumptuous. And I haven't even introduced myself. I'm Mia. With that, Mia gave me a different kind of smile, one that seemed more mature. Oh, I'm Brian. And you didn't bother me at all. Before meeting you, I was about to spend my last money on non-alcoholic beer to drown my sorrows. When I joked, Mia laughed naturally too. We continued to sit on the bench, chatting about various things and really hitting it off. Though it was just small talk, it was the most fun and fulfilling time I had in a long time. The sun has set without us realizing it. I don't have a watch, so I lost track of time. I'm sorry for talking so much. Especially since you have work tomorrow. She tried to end our pleasant time together. Feeling a sudden pang of loneliness, I couldn't help but invite her. If you don't mind, would you like to come to my place? It's a shabby apartment, but it's better than here because it has a roof. Even I thought it was a bold proposal. Inviting a woman to my place. But I didn't want to part ways with her, so I was desperate. That would be an imposition, wouldn't it? She seemed only worried about being a burden and not about the possibility of my having ulterior motives or the discomfort of going to a man's place. Maybe she lacked such wariness because she was homeless? I was still worried about her. I want to talk to you more, Mia. It's been a long time since I've had such a great time. Besides, as I said before, my place is a shabby apartment. Sometimes the roof leaks, but it's still better than being out in the rain. Yes, you're right. Then, if you don't mind, I'll take you up on your offer. Mia answered hesitantly, so before she could change her mind, I took her back with me. From that day on, Mia and I started living together. Although it wasn't cohabitation in the romantic sense, living under the same roof with a woman made me nervous. Changing clothes, taking a bath, having someone else around made me a bit conscious of my actions. However, Mia naturally adjusted to my lifestyle to avoid disrupting it. Moreover, she took care of all the housework, saying, "I can't just freeload." When I came home, a clean apartment and a delicious meal awaited me. More than anything, I was happy to have someone greet me with "welcome home." The laundry I used to do after work was done when I returned, and my dress shirts were always neatly ironed. Seeing this made my female colleagues suspect that I had a girlfriend or was living with someone. I denied their words, but deep down, I felt a sense of joy. Mia understood my financial situation well and helped me save money. She would visit several supermarkets to find special deals and even grow vegetables in planters. She took care of many things without spending money, putting in a lot of effort. Once, I told her, "You don't have to go to such trouble. Please buy what you need within our budget." But Mia laughed and said, "I have plenty of time." If you can buy time with money, the reverse is also true. Coming home to Mia made me finish work faster. Just knowing she was there was enough motivation to complete my tasks quickly. Not having to do housework and Mia's excellent management of our finances meant I no longer constantly worried about money, allowing me to focus more on my job. As a result, my efficiency improved, and I received more praise from my boss. Although the new president, Mr. Thompson, continued to dislike me and occasionally harass me, I became more capable of handling it. "Recently, I hear you've been improving your performance." I turned around to see Mr. Thompson standing there with a malicious grin. That day, an email detailing Mr. Thompson's alleged misappropriation of company funds was sent to all employees. It also mentioned that the new female executive recruited from another company was actually his girlfriend. The source of the email couldn't be traced, and it was quickly dismissed as a baseless prank, but rumors spread among the employees. Because of this, Mr. Thompson was in an exceptionally foul mood today. "I bet I'll be his target again today," I thought immediately. The best way to get through this was to obey quietly and wait for him to be satisfied and leave me alone. "Good evening. I need you to work overtime, given your recent performance. Now." I checked the clock, it was just past quitting time. "Got a problem with that? Don't get cocky just because your performance has slightly improved. You're still a low-level employee because you can't do your job." He spoke as if implying he earned his position as president through merit. In reality, he only inherited the business after his father, Mr. Thompson, passed away. I swallowed my thoughts and asked, "What do you need me to do?" He led me to a musty archive and ordered me to compile data from old documents dating back 40 years. These documents, created before the widespread use of computers, were all typed or handwritten with no backup data. The contents weren't urgently needed, and if it truly were urgent, it would have been faster for everyone to pitch in. Clearly, this was just Mr. Thompson's harassment. "When is the deadline?" "By noon tomorrow." "Should be an easy task for you, right?" "Understood." Defying him would only complicate matters. I responded obediently and started the task immediately. Compiling this amount of data would take until the last train, even if everything went smoothly. "Well, I'll leave it to you." With that, Mr. Thompson took other employees and went out drinking again. He probably thinks he can offset his bad reputation by taking employees out drinking. No one would find it strange if I didn't join the gatherings, as I never do. No one would realize that I was assigned such late-night work here. I took a deep breath and began selecting the necessary data from the vast amount of documents and entering it into the computer. The overtime work ended sooner than expected. Looking at the clock, I saw it was 10 p.m. I thought it would take until the last train, so I was glad to be going home early. Mia didn't have a phone, and, of course, my shabby apartment didn't have a phone either. There was no way to contact her in such situations. "I'm home. Welcome back." When I got home, Mia greeted me with relief. It's comforting to have someone welcome me when I return home exhausted. Mia had prepared dinner and waited for me without eating. "When I'm late, please eat and go to bed. I want to wait for you." Is that wrong? I couldn't argue with that. I don't seem to be well liked by my president. Occasionally, he assigns me overtime like this. It depends on his mood, so it's irregular. This might happen again. Mia's eyes widened. "That's harassment." Someone in his position shouldn't be so awful. Her expression showed disbelief. I couldn't help but vent about Mr. Thompson. Exactly. He's losing the trust of the employees and is getting desperate. Since he took over, I've overheard the executives saying the company's sales are plummeting. They say the company is in danger. If it goes under, I'll be out on the streets. I said it jokingly, but Mia seemed genuinely worried. No way. You're working so hard, Brian. It felt good to be recognized for my efforts by someone, especially her. I just want to keep things as they are. How long will this life last? I have no money, but I'm happy living with a wonderful woman. I want this life to continue for as long as possible. I don't want to let go of my current environment. But someday, she will leave. Brian? She called out to me, worried about my silence. This life feels like an old tale. What are you talking about all of a sudden? Though puzzled, Mia listened without denying. Like when someone helps, and the grateful person stays to help out in return. Like the grateful crane? Unfortunately, I'm human, so I can't weave fabrics. In those stories, the woman always leaves at the end. Why are you saying this now? This life with her will eventually come to an end. But if that were the case, I would be playing the role of your wife, Brian. Ha? I'm joking. I'm a whole decade older than you. Now, let's have dinner before it gets cold. Mia deflected my question and set the table with our meal. The next morning, I was called to the executive room as soon as I arrived at work. In the presence of Executive Vice President, Thomas, Senior Managing Director, David, and Head of Human Resources, James. I was handed an envelope with the words, "We want to give you this." Feeling intimidated by the serious atmosphere, I took the envelope back to my desk. Inside the envelope was a document labeled Notice of Termination. What is this? To my shock, it was a termination notice. If I lose my job now, I won't be able to survive. I won't be able to live with Mia anymore either. This must be Mr. Thompson's doing. It's unreasonable, but I can't just accept being fired without cause. I headed straight to the president's office. What's the reason? At my sudden question, Mr. Thompson feigned ignorance, saying, "What are you talking about?" The reason for my termination. Termination? Yes, why am I being fired? Mr. Thompson looked genuinely confused. Could he really not know? If that's the case, who did this? I didn't issue this. Maybe one of the executives decided you were an unnecessary employee. No way. You have the paperwork, right? Unfortunately, you're fired. Mr. Thompson said this with a smirk, and I barely restrained myself from grabbing him. What does this man think about people's lives? I stormed out of the office. A colleague tried to stop me, but I ignored them. I found myself heading to the park where I had met Mia. Sitting on the bench where it all began, I let out a sigh. What am I going to do now that I've lost my job? In these tough times, finding a new job quickly is unlikely, and even if I do, I wouldn't get paid for at least 2 months. How will I survive in the meantime? I wouldn't be able to keep up with my student loan payments. Mia, who finally has a roof over her head, would be homeless again. Lost in thought, my phone rang several times. The calls were from the company. I turned off my phone. Desperate to take action, I went to the employment office, grasping at straws. I spent hours there, diligently looking at job listings until closing time. What am I going to tell Mia? That thought consumed me as I returned to my shabby apartment. I'm home. Welcome back, you're late. As usual, Mia greeted me. Is something wrong? She immediately sensed something was off and asked me with concern in her voice. I was fired today. What? I received a termination notice. Mia seemed to ponder this and then muttered, "That's strange." What could be strange about it? Her muttering stuck with me. Let's sit down and have dinner. I followed her lead and sat down. Even during dinner, I couldn't help but sigh, unable to enjoy our usual conversation. My last name is Thompson. At first, I didn't understand what she meant by that sudden statement. What was significant about the name Thompson? It's not a common name, but it's not particularly rare either. The company president's name is also Robert Thompson. When I looked at Mia, thinking, no way, she gave a small nod. Robert Thompson is my younger brother. What? You two don't look alike at all. That's what surprises you? Mia's remark made us both laugh. Why would Mr. Thompson's sister be homeless? Though the current president is the way he is, their father, the former president, was a kind and well-loved man. Sorry for keeping this a secret. I wanted to wait until things were more settled before telling you. With that, Mia began to explain her story. Father told us that if anything happened to him, the company should be jointly owned by my brother and me. But even before he passed away, my brother had taken all the necessary documents and was preparing to take over. As soon as our father died, he changed the company's ownership to himself. By the time I and the other executives realized, it was too late. I was thrown out without even being able to take my cards or phone. What a terrible story. Not only did he take over the company, but he also kicked his own sister out with nothing. That must have been tough. When I said that, she smiled gently. Even in such a time, you are kind enough to worry about me. You're really a nice person, Brian. Right, I just lost my job too. I wasn't in a position to worry about someone else. Sorry. I brought you here thinking having a roof over our heads was enough, but now this. I'll find another job as soon as possible, and then. I trailed off. I had no right to promise a future with her. I was just a temporary housemate. Your next job is already decided, Brian. What do you mean? Would you work at my company? She smiled playfully. Despite being older, her expressions changed so frequently, which I found charming. Actually, a lawyer looking for me came by recently. Before he passed away, the former president had created a new will without telling anyone. It stated that the company should go to Mia alone, excluding her brother from inheritance. So, Mia, you're the new president? Yes. I couldn't believe it. The termination notice you received was from my brother. Your actual job offer is separate, so please pick it up at the office tomorrow. Okay. Then, Mia sat properly and bowed deeply. Thank you for everything. You saved me and helped me return to my rightful place. I quickly sat facing her and bowed as well. No, it's I who was saved by you. Thanks to you, Mia, my poor life, which was just about getting through each day, has turned into something fun and happy. I felt like crying as I spoke. It meant we had to part ways. Our modest, happy life together would end. This is our last supper together. Mia said sadly. I'm poor and younger than you, but if possible, I'd like to live with you forever. I would regret it if I didn't say this now. I gathered my courage and told Mia. Please come to the office tomorrow. I'll be waiting for you. Instead of answering, she gently took my hands in hers, squeezing them softly. After dutifully helping clean up after dinner, she left the shabby apartment. The next morning, after a sleepless night, I arrived at work to find the office in an uproar. Brian, why didn't you answer your phone last night? I called you multiple times. As I put my bag on my desk, my colleague angrily confronted me. You missed a lot. It turned out that the executive Mr. Thompson hired was indeed his girlfriend. They discovered he was using company funds to buy her a luxury apartment, car, and brand-name goods. They're both awaiting disciplinary action. But a new president is already decided. Really? Yeah, and as soon as you arrived, I was told to send you to the executive room immediately. So, go. I headed straight to the executive room. The termination notice you received yesterday was not meant for you. There was a mix-up with the contents of the envelope. I'm sorry for the confusion. You should go to the president's office to receive your actual appointment letter from the new president. I returned the mistaken termination notice and headed to the president's office. When I knocked, a familiar voice said, "Come in." Excuse me, I said as I entered the room, and there was Mia. She looked different from the Mia I knew. Her long hair was styled up, and she was dressed in a sleek suit, discussing matters with her secretary. When she saw me, she dismissed the secretary from the room. Meeting like this feels a bit embarrassing. Once we were alone, she reverted to the Mia I knew. You look great in that suit. I'm not used to it, it feels strange, she said with a shy smile, then she switched back to her professional demeanor and handed me an official letter. Brian, I appoint you as the new executive director of this company. What? Me, an executive director? I've heard about your work from the other executives, and from living with you, I know your character better than anyone. As we rebuild this company, I need your help. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And if possible, I'd like you to be my partner in life as well, both professionally and personally. Really? Last night, I couldn't respond right away because I thought being older than you, we might not be a good match. But I feel the same way you do. Forgetting we were at the office, I embraced Mia. We then started living together, with the promise to marry once the company's operations stabilized. We lived in that shabby apartment. For a while, we continued our lives as if nothing had changed. The only difference was that our living arrangement had turned into a romantic cohabitation. The company prospered, and we got married sooner than planned. It was bittersweet to leave the old apartment, but shortly after getting married, we discovered Mia was pregnant. And we moved into a spacious condo suitable for our growing family. As a side note, after the scandal, her brother and his girlfriend were arrested for their crimes and spent some years in prison. Rumor has it they are now living as homeless people. It felt like a dramatic turn of events, like a story where lives had swapped. 25 years have passed since then, and our son is now the same age I was back then. He joined the company as my successor and works under me. Time has flown by. That day, my son brought his girlfriend home for the first time. They've grown up so fast. After our son and his girlfriend left, I invited Mia for a walk. How about starting our second life here? That sounds wonderful. The place where our old apartment once stood is now an empty lot. We decided to build a house here. This is the place filled with our memories. The days we spent in that shabby apartment are still vivid in our minds. My name is Tom Anderson. I'm 46 this year, and I have a wife, Emily, and a 3-year-old son, Jack. A 46-year-old with a 3-year-old son. To most people, he might be considered a late-born child. Jack looks like Emily with his big, bright eyes and round, chubby cheeks. He's incredibly cute. He is truly our treasure. Thank you for being born. Our hearts are filled with gratitude. He laughed. He stood up. He said, "Daddy." He completed his first errand. Every day is filled with surprises and growth. Experiencing emotions and joys I never knew when I was alone. Feelings I've never felt before. My life is now rich with color, and each day passes busily and vividly. He is just so adorable. I find myself watching over everything he does with a goofy smile. Why are you grinning like that? You look creepy. Someone might mistake you for a weirdo. Emily often teases me, but I can't help it. Our son is as adorable as an angel. When he's with Emily, his angelic charm multiplies. Together, they make my head spin. They're a guilty pleasure. I used to think I wouldn't hurt even if he were in my eye was an exaggeration, but now I want to tell my past self how wrong I was. Our son is truly so cute, it wouldn't hurt even if he were in my eye. In fact, I want to keep him in my sight forever. Am I crazy? No, I'm not the only one. Jack's charm captivates my father and grandfather as well. They live on the same property, though in different houses, so they can come and go freely. If I can't find Jack, he's usually playing on my father's lap or out for a walk with my grandfather. Everyone competes to take care of Jack. It's inevitable, our child is just that angelic. Oops, I should stop bragging about my son. We wouldn't want him to get kidnapped. I run a small company. It's a local, community-based construction business. My grandfather was a master carpenter, managing a team of highly skilled craftsmen. Every day, many workers labored in the workshop next to our house. They were busy carrying, cutting, and assembling wood, working up a sweat. As a child, I thought they looked incredibly cool. I loved the sound of the plane shaving wood and the smell of sawdust. The way the wood shavings sparkled in the sunlight was mesmerizing. It was beautiful. I could watch for hours, utterly fascinated. This place is full of dangerous things, so you can't move around on your own. My grandfather was strict and quite scary. He was the epitome of a master carpenter. Even though he was pleased with my interest, he wouldn't let me into the workshop because it was too dangerous. But what child would give up that easily? I would sneak peeks into the workshop whenever I had the chance, making sure my grandfather didn't catch me. The foreman, John, would always invite me over when he saw me. "Hey, sport, back to watch again? Come on over here," he'd say, beckoning me to his side to watch him work. "Sport, do you like the plane?" "Yes." When you use the plane, the wood becomes so smooth and shiny. It's like magic. Is that so? Magic, huh? Well then, let me show you a bit of magic. John usually didn't talk much. He quietly worked on his wood. A bit of an oddball, but a master with the plane, respected by his peers. He could shave wood thinly or thickly, making it look like delicate chocolate curls. It seemed as though the wood enjoyed being shaved by John. Amazing. "John, the wood looks happy. It's saying thank you for making it beautiful." Can you understand what the wood is saying? No, I can't understand it, but it looks like it's smiling. The wood is smiling, huh? To me, it seemed like John could hear the wood's words. He always looked so happy while working with the plane, as if he were talking to a lover. Some people found this creepy, so John often worked alone. But his skills were unquestionable, so no one complained. I believe my grandfather relied heavily on John. With technological advances, carpentry work was increasingly replaced by machines. Fewer wooden houses were being built, fewer young people aspired to be craftsmen. The work gradually dwindled, and my grandfather's face grew more and more forlorn. He used to proudly show off the main pillars he found. "Look, Tom. Isn't this a magnificent main pillar?" It was a perfectly straight piece of Zelkova wood, so thick that I couldn't wrap my arms around it. The main pillar is the heart of the house. It is the house itself and its guardian spirit. My grandfather was particular about the main pillar. To clients hesitant due to budget concerns, he would often say, "What are you talking about? The house is defined by its main pillar. Don't skimp on the important parts." We often visited houses that used those meticulously selected main pillars. This is my pride. Look, isn't it a magnificent main pillar? I remember him showing off the pillars proudly, even though the houses weren't his. Despite his dedication and pride in his craft, there was nothing my grandfather could do without houses to build. Carpentry had become a declining industry. My father refused to take over the company. Being an only child, if he didn't take over, the business couldn't survive. My grandfather considered closing the company. He was actually in the process of shutting it down, introducing his craftsmen to trusted fellow carpenters. I'm pretty sure John also moved to some construction company during that period. My grandfather's company was slowly being dismantled, but I opposed it. "Grandpa, when I grow up, I'll become a carpenter. I'll take over your company, so don't quit." In hindsight, what a cruel thing that was to say. At the time, my grandfather was already over 70. In those days, people in their 70s were mostly retired and hardly working anymore. Craftsmen were passing their skills to the next generation and stepping back from the front lines. Telling my grandfather not to quit in such an environment was practically a curse. But my grandfather smiled warmly and said, "Really? You'll take over, Tom? Then I have to keep going." True to his word, my grandfather remained active until I became an adult. By the time I took over the company, the era was already dominated by housing manufacturers. Our company survived as a local construction firm, taking orders from these manufacturers. Thanks to my grandfather, I also became knowledgeable about main pillars, but in today's world, houses requiring such pillars are rare. Still, whenever we could, my grandfather and I would go to the mountains together to find potential main pillars. As my grandfather approaches 90, his legs are still strong, and his love for main pillars persists. "One day, I want to build a magnificent house with you, Tom. That's my dream too. I hope the day comes when we can make it come true." I met my wife, Emily, during one of these mountain walks. While we were looking at trees, Emily was looking at flowers. Emily is a chef specializing in organic cuisine and runs a small local cafe. That day, she was looking for herbs and other plants to use in her cooking but got lost while looking down at the ground. Oh! Finally, someone. I'm so glad. She sighed in relief as soon as she saw me, and my heart was struck in an instant. Miss, did you come all the way here alone? Yes, I was looking for herbs, but I got lost while looking down. Her charming smile made her look like an angel or a mountain goddess. While I was dazed by her divine presence, my grandfather and Emily hit it off immediately. Wow! What a magnificent tree! It has such a commanding presence. You've got a good eye, miss. This will make a fine main pillar. My gut tells me so. Are you a carpenter, sir? Yes, I am. My grandson Tom has taken over now, but I still hammer away, building houses. That's so cool. A real craftsman. Don't flatter me too much, you'll make me blush. My grandfather said, beaming with pride. I thought to myself, if things go well, my grandfather's old age will be secure. Maybe I can give him a great-grandchild to hold. Even though I hadn't even introduced myself yet, I was already envisioning a future with Emily. Even after getting married and having our son, Emily continued working. With my grandfather, father, and mother at home. Even when Emily goes to work, she feels at ease knowing there's someone to take care of her son, Jack. And above all, Emily shines when she is cooking. Though we work with different materials, we understand each other as craftsmen striving to perfect our skills. Emily started joining us on our mountain walks on weekends. My grandfather would look up, and Emily would look down. I'd guide the two of them to prevent them from getting lost. Maybe one day, Jack will join us too. Imagining such a future fills me with excitement. The bond we formed in the mountains quickly led to our marriage and the blessing of a child. Kids grow up so fast. Before I knew it, Jack was old enough to go to kindergarten. Since preparation is crucial in cooking, Emily always leaves for work early in the morning. I have more flexibility with my schedule, so it's my job to take Jack to kindergarten. It's about a 20-minute walk from our house. It's not far enough to drive, so we take a leisurely walk there. However, kids at this age don't walk straight. Look, a butterfly. He runs off to chase it. Dad, look at the flowers. Should we pick some for Mom? No, Jack, those flowers belong to that house. They're taking good care of them. Then how about those flowers over there? It's sweet how he thinks of his mom, but if we keep stopping, we'll be late. We can look at the flowers with Mom next time. That way, we can find the one she likes best. With that, I coax him along towards kindergarten. The morning drop-off is fine, but the pickup is tricky. Kindergarten ends in the middle of my workday. I can't just leave work. So, the pickup is usually handled by my mom or my grandfather. Most of the time, my mom picks him up and does the grocery shopping afterward. But when she's busy, my grandfather steps in. What happens when you leave my grandfather and Jack alone? Chaos ensues. Jack is incredibly curious, just like my grandfather and more so than my father or me. He stops to inspect every tree and plant, turning a 20-minute walk into a 40-minute adventure. Once, during the height of the growing season, they were gone for over 2 hours. We were in a panic, thinking they might have been in an accident. Or that my grandfather might have started wandering off due to dementia, or that Jack might have been kidnapped. They returned, covered in burrs. After that, we equipped them with small devices with GPS and talk functions. Despite his spirit, my grandfather couldn't escape old age. He once threw his back out trying to lift a piece of lumber. He wasn't bedridden, but picking up a kindergartner was out of the question. Until his back healed, I took over picking up Jack. This meant leaving work early. Changing clothes was a hassle. The kindergarten wasn't far. So, I went in my work clothes. When I arrived, I encountered the group of moms picking up their kids. I recognized some faces and greeted them when one woman marched over. Her name was Jennifer Smith, the boss of the mom group. Her husband was a manager at a well-known national home building company, and she often used this fact to assert her dominance. She always wore expensive clothes and flaunted her branded bags. Though she lived only about 10 minutes away, she always arrived in a luxury car. To someone like me, it seemed like a waste of gas money for such a short distance. But to Jennifer, the extra gas expense was a status symbol. Just from these observations, our values were incompatible. I knew we wouldn't get along. I've never seen it myself, but according to the neighbors, Grandpa and Jennifer are arch-enemies and clash like a mongoose and a cobra whenever they meet. They would glare at each other every time they met. Oh my, still doing things the old-fashioned way? How dreary, it's making the kindergarten feel so gloomy. What are you talking about, you? Still flaunting those gaudy outfits? Can you even chase after your kid in that? My child, unlike yours, doesn't run off unpredictably. Please don't compare him to your uncontrollable rascal. A little mischief is good for a kid. Hey, champ. Want to join us? Stop it. If my kid hangs out with the likes of you, he'll turn out just as weird. People around us were nervously watching, wishing these ugly arguments would stop for the sake of the kids. My mother struggled due to her relationship with my grandfather. Whenever she picked up Jack, Jennifer would make snide remarks like, "Oh, did the old man finally kick the bucket? It's so peaceful today." It made things difficult for my mom, but she put on a brave face to avoid upsetting her grandson. Sorry for causing you so much trouble, Mom. Now, Jennifer was charging towards me. Hey, you in the filthy clothes. Was she talking to me? Yes, you. Why are you wearing work clothes to pick up your kid? I'm still on the job. Which kid's father are you? I'm Tom Anderson. Jack plays with your son Ryan a lot. Thanks for looking after him. Oh, from the stubborn old man's family? Calling my grandfather a stubborn old man to my face? She must be brave to say that to someone she just met. My grandfather seems to be fond of you too. Thanks for that. We're not doing him any favors. It's just a polite greeting. Obviously, it's a social nicety. Anyway, your clothes are filthy. I don't want people to think my kid goes to the same kindergarten as yours. Could you leave? This is my company's uniform. I take pride in my work, so your comment is quite disrespectful. What's wrong with calling filth what it is? And what's with a uniform that's work clothes? That's so low class. I can't let that slide. What do you mean by low class? Low class is low class. My husband graduated from a top university and is now a manager at Summit Housing. You've heard of it, right? A top-tier, publicly traded company with branches nationwide. That's what makes him an elite. While people like you who work in small workshops in dirty clothes are the bottom of society. Remember that. It's impressive that your husband is a manager at a major company. But his company wouldn't function without the support of subcontractors and craftsmen. Shouldn't there be respect for those at the bottom too? Ha! What a joke. Respect? For you? Be grateful we give work to people like you. You'd go out of business without jobs from us. She really loves the word bottom. It's true my company gets jobs from your husband's company. But the one to thank is your husband, not you. If he acts superior, that's one thing. But why should you? What's there to respect about you? The other moms and teachers watched us anxiously. Some even seemed excited about how this confrontation would unfold. Go! Put her in her place. I could almost hear them cheering me on. Jennifer likely always acted superior like this. People with undeserved power are scary. They don't listen to reason or logic, and their arrogance knows no bounds. You are wrong. Anyone who tried to correct them would face severe retaliation. Everyone was too scared to step in. What's with your attitude? You're infuriating. This is bad for the kids. Leave now. The bad influence here is your attitude, lady. I cursed her in my mind. People like her only drain your energy. It's best to just walk away. Enough is enough. Fine, if you insist. I guess I won't be building that $10 million house with your husband's company. $10 million? Are you kidding me? Someone like you can't build a $10 million house. Save your dreams for bedtime. All right. It won't be long before your confidence wanes. You'll regret this. I took my son's hand and quickly left the kindergarten. The next day, I had an unexpected visitor at work. "Mr. Anderson, Stephen Smith from Summit Homes is here to see you." "Stephen? We didn't have a meeting scheduled today." I feigned ignorance, but I had a good idea why he was here. Stephen Smith from Summit Homes, a name many of you might recognize. Yes, the husband of Jennifer, who confronted me at the kindergarten, was none other than a client of mine. And I had a $10 million new build contract with Summit Homes. My grandfather was a master temple carpenter, specializing in the restoration and construction of national treasures and cultural properties. He was considered a living legend in the industry, known as a cultural property preservation expert. Even though he had retired from the front lines, he used to earn close to $1 million a year. Following in his footsteps, I also became a certified temple carpenter. Though not yet at my grandfather's level, I am recognized as a top-tier temple carpenter and earn a substantial income. I rebranded our inherited company as a construction firm. In today's world, it's tough to survive solely on carpentry work. As a construction firm, we could oversee comprehensive projects involving various trades, including design and project management. Having a sales department is a huge advantage. Being a carpenter, project manager, and salesperson allows me to directly interact with clients and accurately meet their detailed needs. Our meticulous approach to client consultations, precise and satisfying finishes, and thorough aftercare. This thorough preparation builds client trust and leads to the next job. We're now heavily invested in renovations, and after being featured on TV, we have bookings several years in advance. Our sales have doubled, tripled, even quintupled, allowing us to raise employee salaries and providing financial benefits to our families. As the CEO of a construction firm, building an ordinary house isn't an option. In a small town, we decided to use our home as a marketing tool. The conclusion we reached was a $10 million new build. If this construction order falls through, Summit Homes won't be able to take it lightly. I didn't tattle to Stephen. Jennifer, with her chatty and prideful nature. She must have mentioned the incident at the kindergarten herself. Stephen must have rushed over after hearing about it. "Tom, it seems my wife caused quite a bit of trouble yesterday." "Oh, that?" I feigned ignorance. "Did Jennifer say something?" "Well, she made some unnecessary comments about your attire. To us craftsmen, our work clothes are a sacred uniform, a source of pride. It's not pleasant to have them belittled." Of course, I understand. I could see Stephen sweating. He didn't look well. But that's not the main issue. I was at fault for not changing out of my work clothes. Not at all. But calling us low class is a bit much, don't you think? Is our work really considered low class? Absolutely not. There's no such thing. He was turning pale. "Are you okay, Stephen?" Given the uncertainty about entrusting work to such low-class individuals, we might have to reconsider our future dealings. "Please, wait. That would be a problem." Of course it would. Losing the expertise of my grandfather and me, top temple carpenters, would be a significant blow to Summit Homes. They couldn't afford to lose us. And about the $10 million new build we've requested, I think we'll have to cancel that as well. "Please, wait. That would be a huge problem. Even if it's a problem for you, I'd been insulted too much to just let it slide. I've spoken to Jennifer. I've explained how reputable Anderson Construction is and how skilled your craftsmen are. We owe a great deal to you. Please, can you find it in your heart to forgive us this time?" Stephen was sweating profusely, visibly anxious. "I don't like mixing work with personal matters. But your wife's behavior was beyond the pale. She insulted not just me but also my grandfather. And in front of the kids. Do you know that your son, Ryan, has been treating my son, Jack, coldly? He said, 'I won't play with you because you're boring,' using words he probably doesn't even understand. What do you think about that? I'm truly sorry about that." With that, Stephen started to cry. It seemed he had been fed up with Jennifer's behavior for a long time, and seeing his son start to mimic her was breaking his heart. He had tried to talk to Jennifer, but she insisted she wasn't at fault, and nothing changed. Her constant need to assert dominance had made them unpopular with the neighbors. But her pride was as towering as Mount Everest and only continued to grow. Jennifer takes pride in my position at a major housing company and boasts about it everywhere. But as a manager, I don't have as much power or success as she claims. My status is largely due to the excellent work Anderson Construction does. I can't continue with Jennifer if she keeps acting this way. I'm going to divorce her. Announcing this to me wasn't something I was prepared to handle. I'm calling Jennifer here to apologize. With that, Stephen called Jennifer. While waiting for her, Stephen continued to vent about his wife. It felt like a therapy session. Soon, Jennifer arrived. What is this about? Why did you call me here? It's so dirty. My clothes will get ruined. Quiet. Apologize to Mr. Anderson for your rude behavior yesterday and all the other times. What? Why should I apologize? They're just our subcontractors. We're above them, so there's no need to apologize. I'm a manager because of Tom's support. If Anderson Construction pulls out, I could be demoted or even fired. Apologize now. If you don't, I'll divorce you immediately. Whether she understood her mistakes or was simply cowed by her husband's intensity, Jennifer turned pale and began to apologize to me. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please forgive me. Has she ever worked a day in her life? She doesn't seem to know how to apologize properly. Getting upset at her would just drain my energy. Let's leave the past behind. Just stop using foul language in front of the children. Can you do that? Yes, I'll try. Not try. You must understand and do it. I understand. I doubt she's genuinely changed, but continuing this would be unfair to Stephen. I'll let it go. So, Mr. Anderson, about the $10 million new build. I'll observe Jennifer's behavior from now on. I'll decide after that. Understood. Pulling the stunned Jennifer along, they left. You're too soft. You should have given her a harder time. You were listening? I saw Jennifer rushing over and wondered what was going on. So, I eavesdropped. I didn't want to push too hard and provoke her. We'll still have to deal with her after kindergarten. In a small community. From elementary school, and possibly all the way through high school, our sons will likely spend time in the same environment. There's no need to pass on our conflicts to the next generation. The next day, Jennifer became very quiet. After dropping off her child, she would leave without talking to anyone. Not interacting meant she couldn't assert her dominance. The other moms seemed more cheerful. Jennifer had been constantly complaining to the kindergarten. But that stopped, making it easier for the teachers, who now worked with smiles, creating a peaceful atmosphere. Such an atmosphere naturally affects the children. They stopped quarreling, and the overall mood at the kindergarten brightened. Jennifer, the only one still sulking, stopped showing up after about a month. She was so stressed from acting humble outside that she vented her anger at home on Stephen. Why do I have to go through this? She raged daily, leaving Stephen utterly exhausted and dismayed, leading eventually to their divorce. Stephen got custody of Ryan, and Jennifer was kicked out of their home. Her brother and sister-in-law, who had taken over the family home, refused to take her back. So Jennifer rented a cheap apartment in the next town and began living alone. Needing to earn a living, she started working at a nearby supermarket, facing quite a few challenges. As a newcomer, she was bossed around by veterans. Having always been the one asserting dominance, she now found herself on the receiving end. It must have been quite a humbling experience. She's probably learning firsthand how hard work is and the importance of relationships. Or perhaps she's cursing me as the cause of her misfortune. Life is long. If she can reform and take a new step forward, that would be ideal. Stephen's mother moved in to help care for Ryan. On his days off, Stephen handled the drop-off and pick-up. Stephen's suave demeanor was well received by the moms and he was easily accepted. As I started seeing him more at the kindergarten and began talking privately, the distance between us lessened. We discovered we share the same hobbies, and now we bond as dad friends, sharing parenting concerns. This kind of relationship is quite nice. The $10 million new build is currently under construction. With Jennifer gone, the project, which doubles as a showcase for our company, is progressing well. Building it holds great significance. The hybrid structure of wood and steel is sturdy and long-lasting, with a wooden exterior that will surely captivate many. Anderson Construction is handling the wooden parts, especially the main areas of the house. Building our own house with our own hands. I want my son to see that. At the center stands a massive main pillar that my grandfather and I painstakingly selected. It is the culmination of my grandfather's life work, majestic and beautiful enough to gaze at for hours. I want to build a magnificent house with you someday, Tom. My grandfather used to say, almost like a mantra. Now, that dream is coming true. Every task brings back memories. John quietly working on his wood in the corner of the workshop. The sawdust dancing in the light, its smell. The sweat of the busy craftsman, houses coming together like magic. The days spent in the mountains, learning the craft of carpentry. Among those encounters was Emily, and together we built a family. Now, watching Jack grow has become the center of our lives. All these experiences are being infused into the new house. This house will surely be warmer than any other. Not only for those living in it but also for those visiting. As we build, Jack watches from a distance. When I grow up, I want to build a house with great-grandpa too. He declares, his eyes shining. My grandfather smiles warmly, looking at his great-grandson. Yes, let's build a house together, shall we? Whether that dream will come true, I don't know. But I hope such a future comes. I can't help but wish for it.